I think facial and general character animation is something most people find daunting, even the experts, but certainly the newbies and novices. I think when people are starting to learn Blender is the one thing they put off the longest. But don't be scared, because it's actually pretty straightforward to do some basic facial animation with simple setups. And I'm not saying you're going to be doing Pixar level character animation by the end of this video, but you'll be able to do something, and something is better than nothing, right? So let's get to it. So this is the Rigify rig that comes with Blender, and I've never used it before. My rigs are certainly not this level at all. A lot of people ask me what plugins and tools I use for my character animation. It's not this. I'm hoping to use this in the future. But at the minute, I'm doing things that are a lot more simple and probably quite amateurish. No complaints so far. No one seems bothered by my character animation, so it seems to be doing the trick somewhat. So I'll show you the very basics of what I do. And hopefully, if you're a bit scared of doing character stuff, then hopefully it will make you realize that it's not actually that scary to do like the very simple stuff. So if I delete this scary rig and go back to basics with a cube, there we go. So if I make the most basic of mouths, so I insert, I scale, and I move down, and I extrude inward. There we go. I've got a mouth, right? So if I go to my trusty shape keys tab, add a basis, and then add a new key, then we go to edit mode, and we turn this mouth into a closed mouth. There we go. Now we've got a shape key set up. So there we go. I've got a mouth, right? I am a robot. I am a robot. I am a robot. That's kind of the very, very basic setup. So you can see what I'm doing, right? I've got a closed mouth, I've got an open mouth, and I can go between the two, and I can go halfway, etc. And then I'm going to go really amateur here, and I'm not even going to stick to the same mesh. I'm going to add an external cube. And there we go. I'm going to parent these cubes to the head. And then we've got two eyes for our robot. The way I would do a blink with something like this is if I take both of these eyes, give them a keyframe, I move forward 5 frames, take another keyframe, and I go 2 frames in, and I'll shrink these down like that. Keyframe. I've got a blink. If I duplicate these a couple of times, there you go. He now blinks. And then rotate this head a little bit. So I like to go pose to pose, and usually around the time there's a blink as well. So if I then move the head like that, do a keyframe, and then around the time he blinks, do another keyframe, and then go over here, like that, keyframe, and then I might add another keyframe here just to make it a little more interesting. There we go. And then we go to, I'm going to put the record keyframe mode on. I'm going to shut the mouth. We're just going to pretend he's talking here, but then we advance, and then we just open and close the mouth. And there we go. We've got a talking robot. Okay, so that is very, very, very simple. And we can do better than that, but you can see what I'm getting at, right? Put a bit of effort into it. Maybe add a new shape key. Or scaled inwards, do a bit of a ooh shape, and then we layer up these shape keys. And there you go. We've got something that looks a little bit like a robot talking. I know it's very basic, but you get what I'm getting at, right? So how do we get a bit more advanced with all this? So delete all this. Let's create something that looks vaguely like a human head. So I'll create the mouth in almost the same way, but this time we're using subdivision modifiers, so it looks a bit smoother, but essentially it's not much different to what I did before with the cube. Let's create a bit of a smile. Let's ramp up this subdivision, smooth it. So now we got our human head. So same thing again, basic shape key, then a new shape key. Let's close this mouth. There we go, we've got opening, closing mouth. And then we can add a few more, so I always like to make a kind of ooh shape second, because that's quite useful. Ooh, there we go. So got the opening and close. And we got the ooh. If I was being more professional, I'd start with the mouth closed and then make a keyframe for it to open, but it's easier just to build the character with the mouth open and do it the other way around, but it's fine. You can worry about that later when you're a bit more professional about these things, but let's try and keep it amateur and basic for now. So ideally you can make a whole bunch of keyframes like smiling, sad, they have asymmetricalism, if that's a word. But you get what I mean, just to cover all bases. You can put up mouth shapes on Google and get a nice idea of what sort of mouth shapes you could be using. So if in doubt, Google mouth shapes for animation. Have a look at this kind of stuff. It's quite useful. Lots of good examples here. So when I'm animating a mouth, I usually start with opening, closing first. So we'll start close, then we'll just open it, and then we'll close it. Then we'll open it, and then we'll close it. There we go. Got a talking mouth, and then secondly I go ooh. And there we go. And we can do a similar thing like we did before for the eyes. So I'm just going to be really basic about it. I'm going to squash these spheres down. Just like a crash test dummy. Comparing that to character head. Then we got some eyes. We do the same as we did before, so we can add a keyframe, then go 5 frames later, and then add another keyframe, and then go 2 frames in, and scaling down keyframe, and we got a blink. Duplicate these a bunch of times. There we go. He's almost got a personality. Let's go crazy and add that black material to the inside of the mouth as well. There we go. We can give a bit of motion to there. So let's over here. I like to go pose to pose again. So let it stop. Keyframe. That's over there. Keyframe. There we go. So how long did that take? Like a couple of minutes to just do something very basic, and that is pretty much how I learned to do simple shape key facial animation. And the more you do that, the more you get used to it, the more you add more shapes. You can add more shapes to the mouths. You can try some of that asymmetrical stuff just to make it a bit more interesting. But I mean, that does the job, right? If you're doing something simple, that works, right? Right? And that is essentially what my first character in Blender looked like. I was about a month or two into my Blender journey. I made something very similar to that, and it took me all day. But I was very proud of it, and I posted it on Instagram and everything, and people were really positive about it. So it's worth giving it a go. And sometimes simple gives a lot more charm compared to like something a little more complicated. So yeah, don't worry about simple. Simple's fine. As long as you can get across the emotion you're trying to portray, then no problem, is it? But we can go better still. So if I delete these eyes, this is always the way I used to make eyes, and these are the way the eyes look in the film I'm making. So it's all still very basic, but again, it does the job. So we've got a sphere, and if we duplicate that with Shift and D and then right click so it snaps back, I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees, and I'm going to hide the other sphere, and I'm going to chop this in half. And if we add the other sphere, and then I'm going to add a solidify filter to that just slightly. And we've got an eyelid. Need this skin color, and rotate it. And then create a nice shiny eye. And then turn this into a pupil. Let's just go with the same black material from before. And let's duplicate this and then rotate it 180 degrees. I mean, it's freaky. So I'm going to parent these eyes to that, and that is freaky, man. But you can see what I'm doing here. Let's give him a bit of a nicer expression. So bring these down. Something a bit more friendly, and then bring these in. Again, you can see what I mean. I will do the same blinking technique. So I'm going to click on all the eyelids. Going to add keyframe. 5 frames in, add keyframe. And then 2 frames in, I'm going to bring this eyelid down, this one up, this one down, and this one up. And then make sure they're all keyframed. If we select more again, just make sure that works. Yep. And then I try and time the blinks with a big movement. So when he moves again, I'll add another blink. And then I'll just add one at the end. Maybe I'll put it in here as well, just to make it a bit more interesting. There we go. And then I like to move the eyes pose to pose as well. So keyframe these eyes, and have them look over here. Keyframe, keyframe. And then he's going to look over before he moves his head. So face over there. Keyframe, keyframe. And then keyframe, keyframe. Let's play this back and see what we're doing. There we go. So he's a very weird looking character, but there is character there. You can see it's an emoting character, right? Blinks do actually give a lot of life to a character, weirdly. So the more blinks you can do, the better, as long as they don't look like they've got something in their eye. Yeah, a lot of blinking does help give a character a bit of life. Right, we can probably go better again. So add another sphere, rotate 90 degrees, shrink that right down. And then we're going to give it a bit of shape. Parent it to the head. And eyebrows are probably the easiest way to get some sort of emotion. So if I want him to suddenly look a bit angry, I will rotate these inwards. Maybe we can raise an eyebrow here. And then we'll end on him looking a bit sad. So bring these eyebrows in like this and raise them up a little bit. And if we play that back, I mean, it's not amazing, but hopefully you can see what I'm getting at here. I think for the sake of a couple of minutes, we just got a lot of expression out of that weird little ball thing. And then we'll pair the head to the body. So with the body, I'm going to move it slightly before and finish slightly after the head moves, just so it smooths out the keyframes a little bit. And there we go. I mean, it's weird looking, but for the sake of a couple of minutes, I think we got a bit of emotion in there. Quite pleased with that. So yeah, how long did that take me? A couple of minutes, and we got a lot of emotion out of a couple of balls. So you can see what I mean, that it doesn't have to be really complicated to get basic facial animation. And what I've done here is barely any different to what I've done for the actual main character of my movie. So if we load him up, So here we are. Here's my main character, and it doesn't look much different to what we had a minute ago, does it? Obviously, I put a bit more thought into the eyes, but otherwise, the eyelids are exactly the same. The eyes are just balls. I did put a YouTube short out the other day showing you a bit more about how I made the eyes, so have a look at that if you haven't already. And shape key wise, started the same, open and shut, got the ooh seconds. Then I start getting a bit more adventurous, so we got smile, we got frown, got eyebrow raise, eyebrows go a long way. I don't have any external eyebrows on this one, so I tried to do it all with the same mesh. It was sad, angry, bit of asymmetry, like I keep saying. It does go a long way to making your characters look a little more interesting. A few out there ones. I use this bloat face one more than you'd probably realize. It's find it quite useful for doing like sudden reactions. Like, so I use a bit of that sometimes. The only difference I've got here is the teeth. So once I've animated the mouth opening and closing, I just animate the teeth going opening and closing at the same time. Again, we can do exactly the same here, nice and quick. So we'll do a starting pose here, keyframe, and then we'll go from pose to pose, move the head, keyframe, pose to pose. Then I'll probably tackle the eyes, so keyframe. And we'll do the same as before for the eyelids, so keyframe these, 5 frames ahead, keyframe again, and then we'll go 2 frames in, we'll bring these down, bring this one up, bring this one down, this one up, select them all, and whenever there's a big head movement, we'll duplicate the keyframe, so he blinks. Do another one here where he moves his eyes. Then we'll do another one straight after when he moves his head. So I might bring that over here. And then we'll do the shape keys. So we'll start with the closed mouth, looking a bit depressed. Then I'll open it up. The end of the open. Let's start with smile. Ugh, he is a weird looking guy, isn't he? And then we'll slowly start to make him look a little more concerned. So maybe we'll add a slight frown here. And we'll go completely horrified by the end. And let's reflect that in the eyebrows. So it says sad, but I find that quite good for happiness as well. So we'll start off like that. Looks a bit worried, so we'll bring it down a little bit. Quite like doing these individual eyebrows. They do go a long way to getting a bit of emotion across. There we go, inquisitive eye. With this weird bloat face one, I might just add a bit of that, just give it a bit of a expression. Add a bit of light to it. There we go, that's how easy it is to animate this thing. Like, how long did that take me? A couple of minutes. That's kind of how I like to do these shots. Oh yeah, and then we got the teeth as well. So these are straightforward as well. Just make sure that the axis is on local, so we can just pull them up and down. Let's keyframe these. Bring these in. Nice and white. Compare that. There we go. That was straightforward, wasn't it? So again, just to reiterate, that character rig is as simple as that little blob we did at the beginning. So there's literally nothing else to it really, apart from a few more shape keys, but you can just build them up as you go along as well. And this is how I animate everything. So if I pull up a more advanced character that I've made, so here is an old character. I've made this a lot more advanced than the ones I've been using lately, but exactly the same setup. So if we look here, lots of shape keys, even down to the nostrils flaring. I can bring the jaw in and out as well for a bit more flexibility, but otherwise, exactly the same. Ear wiggle, that's always good. So yeah, exactly the same. And it just keeps things really quick and easy as well. So like I can churn out these shots in a couple of minutes just because it's how easy it is. We don't need to go too crazy. Obviously, you can go a lot more advanced, like I showed you with the Rigify rig at the beginning, but we don't need to worry about that for now. So if you're looking into getting into character animation and you're a little daunted by it, hopefully I've given you a little insight into how easy it can be. Obviously, you can get a lot more advanced than that, but start really easy, start simple. Learning actual character animation is probably more important than the technical side of things. So learn character animation with the very simple stuff like that. And then who knows, maybe in 6 months' time, you'll be so much more professional than what I'm doing here. But it's always worth taking your time with this kind of thing. Don't rush into anything. Start simple and slowly work your way up to the more advanced stuff. But I've been using Blender for 5 years now, and I'm still using the same technique because it works and it's really quick, and life's too short to be faffing around with rigs sometimes. Sometimes you just want to get results straight away. And as I've shown you here tonight, you can get results in 10 minutes. So worth looking into, I think. Once again, thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.